of Southern Illinois and Southern Illinois University. As many of you know, I have the privilege and the honor of representing this university, its faculty, its student body, in the United States Congress. It truly is a privilege and an honor, and I can't tell you how pleased I am that every time I have an opportunity to speak to President Clinton, he will always remember that he came here to this university when he started his campaign. He remembers Southern Illinois University, and he remembers the people of Southern Illinois. Let me tell you that in the next few minutes, while we are waiting for the President to arrive, I have the honor of introducing some colleagues who are here today that would like to say a few words. The first gentleman is someone who needs no introduction. He is a graduate of Southern Illinois University. He represented this university in the Illinois State Senate. He represented this university, its faculty and student body in the United States Congress before I had the privilege of representing you. He is a man that needs no introduction to anyone in Southern Illinois, my colleague and our good friend, United States Congressman Glenn Bouchard.
Thank you, Jerry, for the kind introduction. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, I was born and raised on a small family farm about 60 miles from here in White County, Illinois. When I graduated from Carmine High School in 1962, as much as my father and mother wanted to send me to college, they simply were not financially able to do so. I joined the Army for 3 years, and when I returned home and enrolled in Southern Illinois University in January of 1966. And when I enrolled, my country, my government enrolled with me. I qualified for the GI Bill, which paid for my tuition and books. The Student Financial Aid Office helped me to get a job right here on campus in the physical plant. And I worked every day in the student work program, funded with federal dollars to pay for my housing and food. I started a family my junior year here at WSIU and was able to get a low-interest student national defense loan. The next year when I graduated, I got a good job and I paid it all back. And thanks to the good, solid education I received here, I've had a good job ever since. Mr. President, through the help of my family and the many great teachers on this campus, I've been able to enrich my life further by earning 2 additional degrees from this, my university. I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've had, and I'm very thankful that when I needed help, my government was there for me. But Mr. President, where millions of my classmates and I stood 35 years ago, millions of young Americans stand today. The need for financial aid is still great, and the responsibility to help is still ours. Only the times are different. When I graduated from high school in 1962, we knew with the right education and training, there would be good jobs waiting for us. America dominated the world in steel and automobiles and aviation and agriculture and banking and 1,000 other industries. Today, our students enter a work world where America must battle our competitors for every inch of economic ground. Our students must be smarter, handle more information, be better problem solvers than any generation before them. But they will not be able to win America's economic battles for us tomorrow if we do not win the budget battles for them today. And every American, regardless of their income level, understands this. Mr. President, I just completed a round of town meetings throughout my district. I did not have one person making over $100,000 a year tell me they wanted a tax cut at the expense of our students' education. I did not have one senior citizen say to me, whatever you do, protect me and don't worry about my children and grandchildren. To was not one statement of greed. To the person, I was told, do what you must do to reduce the deficit. We're worried about the debt, but if a tax cut means foregoing educational opportunity for our children or inappropriate care for our elderly, then don't do it. Mr. President, Americans understand priorities, and they know that financing a tax cut for people who aren't even asking for it and don't need it by cutting educational opportunities for people who are in need is exactly the wrong thing to do. Stay the course, Mr. President. Your 93 budget cut the deficit, and it spurred the development of our economy. This budget must cut the deficit further and continue to spur the development of our minds. Thank you.
The next gentleman that I have the privilege of introducing today is a good friend. In fact, he and I went to the same high school. We have been friends for many years. He is not only my friend, but he is a friend of every citizen of Illinois. He is one of the most distinguished members of the U.S. House of Representatives. He will be the...
This is a wonderful gathering. It is indicative, I think, of the feeling that we have across this country. The change is in the air. We know it when we elected President Clinton in the wrong direction. Glenn Bouchard talked about the proposed $245 billion tax break package, primarily for the wealthiest of Americans. I know people voted for change in November of '94, but they didn't vote for that change. And I can tell you this, people may have voted for change in '94, but they didn't vote for the Congress of the United States to cut $270 billion out of Medicare or $180 billion out of Medicaid. We know, those of us who live in downstate and southern Illinois, how critical those programs are. Not just for your parents and grandparents and seniors all across America, but for the hospitals and clinics that depend every day on those programs to keep their doors open. But the reason we gather here today is not just because of the proposed tax cut. I told his story, I remembered my own, and I'll bet you everyone on this stage has a similar one. I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, Jerry Costello's hometown. At the time that I decided to go to college, there was no way that my mother could pay the way. I borrowed the money from the National Defense Education Act. It's now known as the Perkins Loan. And I had a chance, with that money, to attend university and law school. And when I graduated, and I guess this is going to show my age, but when I graduated in 1969 from law school, I had what I considered to be an impossible college debt to pay off. Are you ready? $7,500. I knew the students here would appreciate that number, because you're lucky if you can get through 1 year now for $7,500. But the government was there standing behind me, standing behind Glenn Bouchard, giving us a chance. We were told, work hard, study hard, get the grades, and here's a helping hand to pay for your education. From where I... And just so you get a little idea of where their values are, last week on the floor, assistance, opportunity. I know it's early in the semester, but it's not too early to give the Gingrich Dole Republicans a failing grade when it comes to education. They are failing to give our young men and women across America, mainly the children of working families, the most basic American right, the right to an opportunity to do your best. Many years ago, this son of a working family was given that chance, as so many others have. Our nation invested in me and millions of others, and that investment will pay off for years to come. The sad commentary on this Gingrich Dole group is that the changes they have proposed will give to each graduate at Southern Illinois University and every college and university across this country a very sad graduation gift. Because of their proposal, each college student in the United States borrowing money from the government who walks across the stage to receive the diploma will also receive an additional bill for their college education of $2,000 to $5,000. Young men and women heading out into the marketplace, ready to struggle to pay their bills and do their best, will now have an additional burden to carry. Well, that isn't the change America voted for in '94. And thank goodness we'll have a chance in '96 to make our own changes in Congress. But I want you to know this. The President's visit today at this university means more than a welcome and a greeting.
President Clinton is here today to confirm, affirm, and reaffirm his commitment to education. He genuinely deserves the title, the Education President. Everybody, presidents before him have claimed to be the education president. The fact is, Bill Clinton has stood by his words and has given us and fought for Goals 2000, for school-to-work legislation, for AmeriCorps, and for direct lending. He believes that education has to be our #1 priority.
Yep.
And so as he leads us in this war to save education and to tie America's future to it, he is joined by a group of warriors here on this stage today. Senator Simon, who just this morning the president said was the first person to mention direct lending to him, the sponsor of direct lending. Our members in the House, Congressman Pichard and Costello and Dick Durbin, soon to be the junior senator from Illinois. Warriors. Warriors for education. And then, of course, myself. Education has indeed been my #1 priority. There is no way I would have been able to be the first African-American woman to serve in the United States Senate from Illinois, America. If America had not invested in me, if America had not believed in the availability of quality public education, and if America had not been the land of opportunity and hope and promise, well, we're going to keep it the land of hope and opportunity and promise. We are not going to let them change the nature of this country with this war on education from the Republican Congress. We know, and you know, education is more than a private benefit to individuals. It's a public good. It serves our entire country. It protects our democracy. It engenders our competitiveness in this world economy. Indeed, education is as much a part of our national defense as any B-2 bomber or missile system. Education goes to the heart of what this country is all about. And so I want to make certain that all of you are ready to enlist as soldiers in this war to make education a real #1 priority for our country again. We can balance our budget, but students particularly, to engage in the debate about priority, to energize the student populations to fight for America's future. You can do it, we can do it, but we have to do it together. And as we come together to fight for America's future, there is no more important battle line than the front for education. And for that, I am grateful to stand by President Bill Clinton and my colleagues from the Congress, the Illinois delegation in Congress, and all of you, because with love, we will put this country on the right track to a beautiful 21st century. Thank you very much.
Ladies and is no other member of the United States Senate that stands out above Paul Simon. He has an unblemished career of public service for the people of Illinois. When we talk about education, as the President will be talking about very shortly, when we talk about student loans and the direct student loan program, Paul Simon is the father of the direct student loan program in the United States Congress. As Senator Carol Moseley Braun said, when President Clinton talked about the direct lending program, he said that he heard it first from Paul Simon. And let me tell you that I suspect that if we had other presidents with us today, that they would say the same thing about similar issues. Paul Simon has been a pioneer in every area that I can think of, but in particular in education. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, our friend Paul Simon has announced that he will be leaving the United States Senate at the end of this term.
Don't do it!
We are all saddened by that because he has done so much for our state. I give you Southern Illinois' very own, McCanda's very own, United States Senator Paul Simon.
Marvelous, and I thank you very, very much. To my colleagues here, to President Guyon and Mrs. Guyon, to my colleagues from the House, Congressman Jerry Costello, Glenn Bouchard, and Dick Durbin. Incidentally, you see all those photographers coming, that's a sign the President is going to be here shortly. That's a good signal. But let me tell you, regardless of your party affiliation, regardless of your political inclination, these three people represent this area very, very well. And I think there is a good chance that Dick Durbin will be representing you in the United States Senate, and he will do that. And my colleague Carol Moseley Braun has been a real pleasure to work with. And let me just give you one example of her effectiveness. She is on the Senate Finance Committee. We've been having a little news about the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee lately.
Just a little.
She is the first African American. She is the first woman to ever serve on the Finance Committee in the history of the Let me also acknowledge somewhere out there is the mayor of Carbondale. Mayor Dillard, where are you? We ought to acknowledge your presence. Back in 1992, the governor of Arkansas, whom I knew only slightly, stopped by my office, wanted to talk about student loans and what we ought to be doing. I knew that he had been one of the leaders in the field of education among the governors of our country who was dedicated to this. And we talked about it, and then a few days later he made a speech at Georgetown University in which he said, we have to move in the direction of direct lending. For those of you who are not students, and direct lending is not only at WSIU, now it is at the University of Illinois, a school to the north you may have heard of. It is at John A. Logan. It is at a number of schools now. 40% of the schools in the nation now have direct lending. Under direct lending, all students are eligible, not just those who meet certain criteria. Second, this is is the problem. This is why we had a fight to get it enacted and why we have a fight to keep the program now. Second, as part of this, we said instead of giving the huge subsidies to the banks and the secondary markets, let's reduce the cost to the students and their parents and reduce the paperwork for the universities. And that's what has happened. And not only we have more students, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of students going to be helped by this who would otherwise not be helped. Not only are students and the parents and the universities helped, but the taxpayers are helped. We're saving over $1 billion a year through direct lending, and that has to be good news to everybody. When I say it has to be good news to everybody, that's not quite accurate. It has to be good news to everybody except for the banks and the secondary markets who have a very, very good deal right now. And we're grateful for the help they have given in the past, but now is the time to give that money and that assistance to students. And let me add, this is not a partisan idea. This idea was first proposed in the House, I say to my House colleagues, by your Republican colleague from Wisconsin, Congressman Tom Petroff. And the chief co-sponsor with me in the Senate was Senator David Durenberger from Minnesota, a Republican member of the Senate. But we face an almost classical fight between the special interests who profit from the old system and the students and the parents and the colleges and the taxpayers who will benefit by change. Let me add, while President Clinton made a commitment to support this program, when I looked at the White House schedules and I saw the bankers on the schedules and Sally Mae and the secondary markets, and I know a president has to try and get along with everybody, I was concerned. But let me tell you, Bill Clinton stood for like a rock of Gibraltar in behalf of the students and the parents and the colleges and the taxpayers. Now we have a choice to make in Congress on the priorities. The President and I'm sure he will talk about this in just a few minutes. And I gather, all right. I wasn't sure whether I had to stretch it out or not here. But now we face a fight. Dick Durbin talked about this. We have given the Pentagon $8 billion more than the Defense Department requested, and at the same time cut education. That doesn't make sense if we want to build a better, finer America. Bill Clinton is on the side of saying let's build a better America by having an adequate defense, but also seeing that we invest in our people. That's what he has said. I hope that's what Congress will say. I'm proud of a President of the United States who stands up and says we have to invest in our people and the future of this nation rather than yielding to the special interests. And so I thank you for being here, and let me just add, after the President speaks, wherever you're from, and I saw a sign over here that said Indiana University supports the direct lending. Whether you're from Indiana, wherever you're from, contact your House members. If you're from Illinois, the senators are with you on this. But stand up. It is not enough for people in the United States Congress, some of whom are wavering. They need to hear from you that we have to invest in education. And I thank you for doing that. Great to be with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President will be out momentarily. Just be patient, please.
Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of Southern Illinois University, I'm delighted to welcome each and every one of you here today. As President Guyon has noted earlier in today's events, this is a very important day for Southern Illinois University. We have a sitting president who will, in a few moments, deliver a major address on student financial aid. Beyond freedom itself, we cherish the opportunity for our children and grandchildren to gain a quality education. This alone makes the President's remarks today truly important. Because of this address, Southern Illinois University at Carbondale will become nationally visible for a few moments, as well it should. This campus is a leader in educational innovation and was selected to administer the pilot direct student loan program. Senator Paul Simon sponsored this historic legislation, so it's fitting that, given the long relationship between the Senator and Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, that the President deliver his initial policy statement about the direct student loan program on this campus. Mr. President, we are delighted to welcome you to Southern Illinois and to Southern Illinois University. And now, Mr. Jason Irwin, a student member of the WSIU Board of Trustees, has a few comments. Jason?
Good morning. Mr. President, in this office are thousands of students whose ability to continue their education is tied directly to federal student support. In some cases, it is direct loans, and in others, it is scholarships. We at Southern Illinois University are very dependent upon state, local, and federal support of our campus. Over 80% of our students receive some sort of financial aid. Today, we look to you and to other leaders of our country to assist us in educating ourselves so that we can contribute to this great country. And on behalf of the students of Southern Illinois University, I bring to you the President of the United States, Mr. Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Ted Sanders. I want to thank Senator Paul Simon and Senator Carol Moseley Braun for being here, and Representatives Jerry Costello, Glenn Pritchard, and Dick Durbin, the SIU Carbondale President, John Guyon, and I want to welcome all the colleges and universities that are connected to us by satellite all around the country. Mayor Dillard, I thank you for being here, and I want to compliment the Saluki Marching Band and the Pep Band. Thank you for your music. Great job. I know that we have a lot of school children here, but I got an especially large number of invitations from one middle school that marched here as a group, the Lincoln Middle School. There they are over there. Thank you very much. I also want to thank all the National Service AmeriCorps members who are here and who are working in Southern Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, I am glad to be back here at SIU, a place which has a very warm place in my heart. I spoke here in 1991, just before I declared as a candidate for President of the United States. It was a memorable evening. I've been back here since then. This is the first time I've been as president, and I am very, very glad to be back here. I've had a wonderful day, and I thank you for making me feel so welcome. I came here today to talk to you about the future of education in America, the role of the student aid programs in that future, and the decisions that will be made about the national budget in the next 60 to 90 days that will affect your future and the future of all Americans. 137 years ago this week, in Jonesboro, just down the road here, about 20 miles, Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas held one of their famous debates. According to a newspaper report at the time, interest in the event was not what it should have been. When the candidates arrived in town, they were met, and I quote, by 2 yoke of steers and a Stephen Douglas banner hanging bottom upwards. Well, I didn't see any cattle on my way in, and all the banners I've seen today are right side up, and there seems to be a good deal of interest. So I thank you for that, and I'm glad to see you. It's appropriate that we're here talking about the student loan issue because, as I'm sure all of you know, about halfway between here in Jonesboro is Senator Paul Simon's hometown of McAnda. Senator Simon is retiring from the Senate this year, but I want everybody in this audience to know that more than anyone else in the United States Congress, he was instrumental in supporting our efforts to pass the direct loan program in 1993, and no one has done more to make the dream of a college education a reality for all American students than Paul Simon of Illinois. The Lincoln-Douglas debates were historic because they occurred at an historic time over an historic issue. The issue then was slavery and whether our country would remain united or be divided, and everyone knew the whole future of the country depended on how it was resolved. Today, at the dawn of a new century, we are in the midst of another period of historic change. The issue today is the end of the Cold War and traditional industrial society and the growth of the global economy, the information and the technology age, and whether we can preserve the American dream for all Americans in this new world. And the whole future of the country depends upon how we answer that great issue, just as it did in 1858. How do we keep the American dream alive in a world where jobs and capital, technology and ideas can travel across borders as fast as the satellite signal that right now is beaming this speech to colleges and universities all around this country? How do we make sure in this age of information where what you can learn depends on what you can earn, determines what you can earn, how can we make sure that there's really opportunity for all people in this country without regard to where they live or what their racial or economic background is? How can we make sure that your country gives you the chance to make the most of your own life, a gift that was given to me and most other people my age that helped us to make the most of our own lives? This is a period of intense change with a lot of wonderful things going on. I honestly believe that the young people in this audience will grow up into an America that will have its best days. I think the future is still going to be better than the past, but only if we meet the challenges of this time. Let's face it, folks, these changes that are going on are awfully good for people who have an education, people who can be in the forefront of the change, but they're pretty tough on millions and millions and millions of hardworking families that are being discarded by big companies as they downsize, forgotten by economic units for which they work for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years, people who don't have a very good education and can no longer get the kind of jobs they used to, or if they get a job, never, ever, ever seem to get a raise. Not so good for the million Americans who are working every year who lose their health insurance. Why? Because all these changes are uprooting people, uprooting companies, uprooting ties that used to bind. We know that unless we can better educate our people, too many of them will be left behind in the global economy of the 21st century. We know today that for 20 years, most Americans earning hourly wages have been working harder and harder for the same or lower wages for 20 years. And we know that if we want to preserve the American dream for all of you, we have got to turn that around. And we know how to do it. At the end of World War II, when the GIs came home 50 years ago, the GI Bill gave people who fought in the war a chance to go to college and a chance to buy their own home. And it made us the strongest economic power in the world by educating our people. In the 1950s, when we got into a race with the then Soviet Union into space, national defense education loans and other investments in higher education gave a whole new generation of Americans a chance to go to college and broaden their horizons, and it made a real difference. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I had scholarships and loans, a job in college, and 6 jobs in law school. I paid all my loans back, but if it hadn't been for those loans, I might never have been given the opportunities that brought me to the point where I am today, and I am grateful to the people in my country who gave me that chance. Now, when I became president, my goal was to get this economy ready for the 21st century and to open opportunity for you, to create more jobs and to set the conditions which will allow us to raise incomes and raise the stability of American families. And in 1993, we passed an economic program that reduced the deficit from $290 billion a year to $160 billion, that cut taxes on the lowest income of our working people and made 90% of our small businesses eligible for lower taxes, and that invested more money in education, research and development, and the technologies of the future to create more high-wage jobs. And in 2.5 years, we've got 7 million more jobs, 2.5 million more homeowners, nearly 2 million more small businesses. But average incomes have still not gone up. You cannot turn around 20 years of trends in 2 years. But I'm telling you, folks, there is no way to do it unless we continue to increase the number of Americans of all ages who are going on to colleges, from the community colleges to the four-year colleges to the graduate schools of America. Listen to this. In 1980, a worker with a college education earned 36% more than a worker with only a high school degree. 1980. Today, 15 years later, that 36% gap has grown to 74%. The difference in earnings between high school graduates and college graduates has more than doubled in only 15 years. Every year of higher education today increases earnings by 6 to 12%, and in many cases guarantees the right to get a job in the first place, something which is increasingly rare for people who don't have a good education. The unmistakable fault line in America over who makes it and who doesn't today, more than ever before, is education. So as we go back to school and the Congress goes back to work, the question is, will your country continue to help those who want to help themselves? Will your country do what it ought to do now, which is what it did for me when I was your age? Will your country meet the challenges of the 21st century, or will we cut off our nose to spite our face by cutting back on educational aid at the time when we need to invest more in it? Let me be clear on this. In this great debate to balance the budget, I'm on the side of balancing the budget. Our country has no business running a permanent deficit. We never had a permanent deficit before 1981. We quadrupled the debt of the country in the 12 years before I became president. We have taken the deficit down from $290 billion a year down to $160 billion a year in only 3 years. It is important that we continue to work to balance the budget. It is important because as we can get a balanced budget, we will spend less of your taxes on debt and we can spend more of it on education, the environment, and the elderly. It is important because if we have less debt, people in private business will be able to borrow money at lower interest rates to create more jobs. It's important to balance the budget, but you want to do it to strengthen the economy and strengthen the incomes of the American people. Therefore, I say we should not balance the budget by cutting education, because we do not have to cut education to balance the budget. We have worked hard in the last 2.5 years to expand scholarships like Pell Grants for deserving students. And we have worked very, very hard on the direct loan initiative. I see the students from Indiana University out here holding up their sign. This year, I learned at this campus, you went to the direct loan program, and 11,000 students got direct college loans. And they didn't have to spend so many hours filling out forms or a day waiting in line for the loan at the bursar's office this year because the program worked. The direct loan program gets rid of red tape, bypasses banks and middlemen, sends the student loan directly to the school where the student gets it in a hurry. I talked to a student just a few moments ago who told me that the difference in this year and last year was a difference in 4 months and 1 week in getting the student loan. This program is better for the students, better for the schools, and believe it or not, it costs the taxpayers less money. It has been a good investment for America, and I thank especially Paul Simon and all these other members of Congress for supporting the direct loan program. For many of you, perhaps the most important feature of the direct loan program is that you can now pay back your loans as a percentage of the income of the job you have when you leave college. This is very important because a lot of people go to school to get jobs that will not make them wealthy, but that will be very important for society. They want to be teachers or nurses or social workers or do something else that's profoundly important to our country. And they borrow money that is so great, if they had to make the loan payment back on traditional terms, they couldn't do it. But if they can make the loan payment back as a percentage of their income, then there will never be a disincentive not to go to school. There will never be a disincentive to staying in school. No one will ever have to drop out of school just because they think their loans are getting too big. We should keep the direct loan program and keep the scholarship programs going. I also favor retaining the policy that does not charge students for interest on their loans while they're in school and gives a 6-month grace period after school before you begin making those repayments. You have to have a job before you can repay the loan. But make no mistake, with the opportunity of the loan comes the responsibility to repay it. I was appalled when I became president and I realized the size of the college loans defaults. I was absolutely appalled that there were that many people that would take money from their government for a college education and not repay it. And I am proud to say we have cut the loan default rate in half in our administration, and we're going to cut it some more. I just want to mention a couple of other things. One of my proudest moments as president was having the opportunity to sign the bill that created AmeriCorps, our National Service Initiative. AmeriCorps is giving thousands and thousands of young people the chance to earn and save up money for college while serving their communities. In Carbondale, we have AmeriCorps members working in the local elementary schools. 20,000 this year, up to 50,000 next year could be serving their country if the Congress will continue to fund the AmeriCorps program. It is a great investment, and it's making America stronger. There are two other proposals that I have made that I hope this coming Congress will adopt. Since there will be a tax cut, the question is, what are we going to cut taxes for, and who will get it? I favor, as my #1 priority, giving a tax deduction to hardworking American families for the cost of education after high school, for their children or for themselves. The second proposal that I have asked the Congress to adopt is one which would basically reflect the new reality of unemployment in our country. 30 years ago, when a person went on unemployment, the chances were 8 in 10 that that person would be called back to the same job. That unemployment was a matter of the business cycle. And the unemployment check, therefore, just tided people over till they were called back to the same job. Today, just 30 years later, the chances are when you're laid off, 8 in 10, that you won't be called back to the old job, and you've got to find a new one. Therefore, I have recommended that the Congress consolidate about 70 separate training programs in the government and just create a fund that will give a voucher to an unemployed American worth $2,600 a year for up to 2 years to take to the nearest community college or other community education institution to get the training that he or she needs to get back in the workforce and on the road to progress. Under all these reforms I just mentioned, if we stick with them, by the year 2002, as many as 20 million more Americans will be able to get less expensive and more flexible college loans. We will be able to award over 3 million more Pell Grant scholarships. And if we maintain our commitment, we're on target to increase the number of Americans who are going to college by over 1 million by the end of this decade. And we need it. All of us need it for the strength of the United States. That means better jobs, higher incomes, a stronger America. All this progress is now threatened by the budget debate now going on in Congress. The congressional majority proposes to balance the budget a little faster than I do and to give a tax cut much larger than the one I propose. Much of it goes to people who are already doing very well and don't really need the money. To do this, they have been willing to cut education and training by $36 billion below the present budget, which is $76 billion less than I propose to spend, while we balance the budget too. They propose to get rid of AmeriCorps. They propose to get rid of the direct lending program and go back to the old system, which was more cumbersome, which will cost the students more money, which will lead to fewer people taking advantage of the loan program, which will mean more headaches to the colleges and universities, but the banks will make their money back. That's all that will happen. They propose to make changes in the interest payments on college loans so that the cost of college loans could be raised by as much as $3,000 for undergraduates and over $9,000 for graduate students. I'm not even talking now about the risks of the education programs that help kids get ready for college. Under these proposals, there'll be 50,000 fewer children in the Head Start program. All the public schools in our country that are participating in our Goals 2000 program will lose their money. The Safe and Drug-Free Schools program will be denied to millions and millions of American children. 2 million American children would face roadblocks on the road to college between now and the end of this decade, the beginning of the next century, if the proposals of the Republican Congress become the law of the land. That is penny wise and pound foolish. We shouldn't cut education to balance the budget. We don't have to do it, and we shouldn't do it. Folks, before I came out here, I spent a fascinating hour or so talking to 11 students from the various states that are represented here, from Indiana and Kentucky and Tennessee, and I met some people from Missouri here earlier, as well as from Illinois. Students, people who are starting their own lives. They're behind me today. Every one of them could not have pursued his or her education without the benefit of student financial aids. And I'd like to ask the people who were with me before I came out here to stand up and be recognized. Would you all stand up? They range in age from 21 to 51. One is a community college student. One is in graduate school. They go to public and private universities. They have different life stories. One has worked her way off welfare and into a position in college leadership. One was an upward bound student who is going to be very upward bound, who will become a doctor. All these people are America. They are what this is all about. Not the organized forces that lobby in Washington. These 11 people. I am doing my best to represent them and their future in your capital. That is what this is all about. Your future. I only wish that every American could have heard these 11 people tell their stories. Talk about the loan programs, the scholarship programs. Talk about how our direct loan program works. Talk about what it means to have hope and a new life and to be working like crazy to make that life. Understand that we're not talking about welfare here. We're not talking about giving people something they don't need. We're not talking about giving anybody something for nothing. We're talking about helping people to make the most of their own lives. And if you don't believe that it will hurt America to walk away from student financial aid, let me just ask you to consider this. In the last 4 years, in the state of California, the state that was hit hardest by the recession because they lost so many defense-related jobs, higher education was cut by 19%. And over a 2-year period, enrollment dropped by over 10%. We need to be increasing enrollment in this country, not decreasing it. We need more people in all of these community colleges and universities and all these programs that are critical to our future, not fewer people. The American dream depends upon our ability to not only create new jobs, but to raise wages and enable our people to compete and win in the global economy of the 21st century. I have been in factory after factory after factory since I've been president. We are now the most productive economy in the world. It is wrong for our economy to be growing and the American people's incomes to be stuck. And education is the way out. I am determined to see that you get it. Let me just say this in closing. Education in my lifetime has never been a partisan issue. When I asked the Congress to create the National Service Program, Democrats and Republicans supported it. When I asked the Congress to expand Head Start, Democrats and Republicans supported it. When I asked the Congress to invest in all these other educational programs just 2 years ago, Democrats and Republicans supported it. Never before has this been a partisan issue. Do not be fooled by the smokescreen of balancing the budget. We are all for balancing the budget. You do not have to balance the budget by cutting college aid. You do not have to balance the budget by shortcutting the future of America. We can do better than that. Help me. Stand up. Write your members of Congress. Tell them to balance the budget and increase investment in education and America's future. Thank you, and God bless you all.